Hi everybody, Rob Scott here from UC Today, and in this session we'll be exploring how BYOC, or Bring Your Own Carrier, can make us all more agile. So today I'm joined by Tony Gooch, Product Manager at Voxbone. Welcome, Tony.
Hi Rob, nice to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining me, Tony. Before we get stuck into this session, how about we have a quick introduction? Tony, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what Voxbone do, please?
Sure, Tony Gooch, I'm Product Manager here at Voxbone. My specialty is integrations and working with the wider telco ecosystem. And what Voxbone brings to the party is that we're a global SIP provider. We're built on Agile fundamentals, so it's all about the ability to help you in a quick and dynamic way. And our focuses are really on ensuring you've got reliability globally, technical innovation, so bringing new capabilities to the party, and that compliance to make sure that your kind of regulatory requirements in this complicated industry is covered from a central point of view.
Great stuff. Thanks, Tony. And for the viewers that may not know what BYOC is, always probably good to mention this. Could you just quickly define BYOC for us, or Bring Your Own Carrier?
Yeah, so I find BYOC is a very kind of more marketing term. And if you've been in the telco industry for a length of time, it really is about choice. It's about, as you're buying a cloud service where you might have telco provision, BYOC is the option where you can actually bring your own carrier to that platform. But what that really does is it makes you much more into the kind of legacy way that the telco has always run, where you're choosing the best of breed applications in your various segments and then choosing the carrier that you may want to bring. And that might be for a number of reasons, for global reach, for compliancy aspects. All of those things are really part and parcel of how BYOC terminology reflects on the telco industry.
Great stuff. So if you're old like me and getting quite a lot of grey hair nowadays, we're talking SIP trunking, but SIP trunking with lots of value added services around it, aren't we? Flexible numbering and compliance, as you mentioned, and things like that. Is that fair to say?
It's very much the case of all of those kind of flexibilities of like real-time setup, transferring between your different systems. All of those types of things are the really important aspect of when you're getting BYOC. It's about how you're putting that together as a complete package. So as an enterprise, the ability to pass calls between like Zoom Phone and your contact center, those types of things are all important aspects that modern telco managers and providers are really looking for. And having that as a flexibility in the business is really why we're talking about that in agile terms.
Absolutely. So we are a long way away from the ISDN lines I used to plug into phone systems back in the day. So how about you tell us a little bit more about this core topic? Because I was really interested I was curious, how can BYOC make us more agile as businesses?
So if we take this kind of step by step, so if we talk about that topic in a little bit more detail, so a lot of businesses may be still coming through that legacy transition. They've spent a lot of money on on-premise equipment, and they've looked to kind of sweat that asset for a length of time. And they might not be sure how to take those next steps. They might have some unified communications in Teams or Zoom or Slack or any of these other UCaaS tools. And actually coming up with a strategy on how to manage that really revolves around how the business is looking at those digital transformation steps. And the benefit that we can bring from a underlying network perspective is that we can obviously work with a whole raft of these providers. So what we can do is link the calls together. So making the ability to transfer from Zoom Phone like natively into your contact center becomes an awful lot easier. It's really about that kind of open telco ecosystem that obviously has really happened in the wider industry. Ability to mix and match AWS and Azure when you're buying compute power is obviously very capable in using Kubernetes and those types of capabilities. But really for me, the idea is that BYOC and getting that kind of global SIP provision underneath all of your different platforms is really how telco industry is doing the same kind of thing. And ultimately that flexibility of being able to link calls between your different platforms using a global carrier like ourselves is really a very different way of handling that. And obviously that brings all sorts of different benefits, cost scalability, resilience, all of those things that obviously we're built on as our global tenants. And ultimately that means that people can be really flexible.
Great. So in terms of the word agile means to be able to change quickly, doesn't it? And in this world, as we record this session today, we are in the middle of a pandemic, and we had to change literally overnight in terms of remotely deploying our workers to home-based offices. I can imagine this BYOC solution coming in very, very handy in a situation just like that.
Correct. So that's very much. I mean, obviously, this is useful at any point in time, but especially during these scenarios. And some of that's really around say when we look at the flexibility, that's about you can be up and running with a new service in minutes. So you could add a new telephone number, you can distribute that to your endpoints in real time using an online portal. So that means that if you had the requirement to close your office or move to a home working option, you still might have inbound calls to handle that your team might have had on a ring group. You can simply do the same principle. You can have that distributed and bounce through different configurations to basically find people, add that through your kind of cloud PBX if you've got one of those solutions, or provide that option that actually if you've got a number with us already, and let's say it was being handled by your sales team, but your sales team are obviously now all remote on mobiles, you could deflect that into your contact center as another queue. So you've got that ability to make some of those real changes dynamically in very, very quick turnaround times to basically help you manage those scenarios when they come up.
Absolutely, I think that's a really key point, especially now, being very timely. But I think it's a really key point. Businesses do want to be agile. Small businesses have that luxury of being a bit more agile than large enterprise, but certainly this makes complete sense. In terms of end customer choices, you mentioned choice. A lot of end customer organizations, especially enterprise, do look at best in class solutions. And does this allow them to kind of connect those different worlds together? Ultimately, you mentioned you might have a UC solution or a phone system solution from Cisco. You might have a contact center from TalkDesk, for example. Are you able to kind of connect everything together?
Yeah, again, that's very much for me what, like when I look at BYOC, I actually think of BYO, and then the C is really choice. Right. It's bring your own choice is the way I like to actually think about that acronym, and that really for me is the best possible way for businesses to work. The whole idea is that you can change any of the layers. So you've got your application choice on the top, you've got the carrier kind of application layer, you've got your front end for control, but ultimately you can change those layers. So if people are not performing, if platforms have obviously got swamped by the volumes at the moment, obviously we've seen some of those things happen in the wider industry, but people have the ability to then flex and obviously reconfigure and modify that choice. But ultimately everything changes, right? We've seen over the years, different applications are the thing that's hot right now. And that situation won't change. I can remember obviously like WebEx was everywhere for years, a few years back, and obviously Zoom and Teams and all of these other players have come to that marketplace, and because they're newer, they've got that extra kind of edge on Cisco right now. But who's to say Cisco won't have the next iteration of their product that adds a whole new bunch of features, and it won't kind of swing back in that direction. It's all about the customer having the choice to select at the time that meets their requirements.
That's a really good point you just made there, isn't it, around vendors and, I mean, almost cloud to cloud switching. We're starting to see that more and more, not just from the old kind of on-premise world to cloud, but cloud to cloud. So that's really interesting. So you're right. If something new comes through from a vendor that your business needs, wants to take advantage of, having that your connectivity in one place and connecting all these different worlds together makes it much more flexible.
Correct, and I think that's ultimately one of the pleasures I've had with kind of working here, is that currently anybody that offers BYOC or provides that connectivity that allows customers to choose the telco provision, I haven't found a system that we can't connect to yet, and ultimately that's my job to make sure that we're able to connect to anybody in the marketplace. And ultimately that's really about that. It's about giving customers choice and allowing them to choose how they want to work, and choosing the product that's right for them, but knowing that they're getting the underlying reliability of this kind of global provision, and making sure they're compliant in those marketplaces. Because say a lot of people kind of choose the product and then don't necessarily think, hey, how do I stay compliant in those regions? And maybe that's one thing that kind of people aren't aware of. One of the things we've seen with the coronavirus side of things is that we've got new emergency numbers cropping up in significant amount of countries worldwide, to specifically help deal with the kind of information dissemination that's needed. So being able to support that in very, very quick turnaround times is also something that's kind of really important for businesses as well. So that's something that obviously we're committed to getting done, and making it easy so customers don't have to think about, oh, I need to add a new number in Croatia or wherever else around the world launches these numbers. It's all done, ready on the system, and then you'll get all those advanced notifications from our team as you need to be aware of them, without having to invest the time or energy of your own legal team to keep up to speed with it.
Yeah, I can imagine that's massive value to the customer, because that is complex. And if you are globally deploying your communication, collaboration, whatever it is across the world, you've got all sorts of regulatory challenges ahead of you. So you take all that away for the most part, you take all the hassle out of that process.
Yeah, that's the idea. Is that one of the biggest teams actually that we have in the business is a legal team, specifically looking after interfacing with the regulatory agencies in that global sense. Obviously, working in the 65 countries that we do, there is a need for quite a big team to work with that. And again, a lot of those challenges are actually quite specialist. So kind of a lot of legal teams don't necessarily have that kind of specialist information on how telco works. They're not necessarily the easiest things to get into. So having that bank of legal specialists kind of managing that means that we basically offer that as a wrapped service into the main piece of our service offering, so that customers just get those regular updates. And obviously I've seen like a significant number in the last few weeks, just as different countries react in different timeframes. And we have had requirements to get a new emergency number up within like 24 hours, which obviously we've done. But that's the kind of benefit of being an agile organization built from scratch, so we don't have that kind of legacy time lapse to get things up and running.
Yeah, and it often is legacy that slows your businesses down, isn't it? There is still a lot of legacy solutions, a lot of legacy infrastructure networks out there. So I'm sure this is music to a lot of people's ears when they hear that they can rationalize everything and remain in control, but remain agile while either deploying fast or expanding or whatever they're doing as a business. So.
Yeah, and it's all about actually the piecemeal aspect. This is not about necessarily having a big bang. One of the benefits I've seen with a lot of customers recently is that they can take like a few numbers, a few channels, and pick off application by application, so
Right.
that they're not having to do like a complete transition in one go. That their business is too big, too complicated to do in one go. But what they can do is kind of almost the insurance model with the buy more cars, get more savings. It's the same principle. As they bring on more service volume, obviously the discounts then kick in, and ultimately they get to that point where they're saving massively over what they were paying. But it's about giving them the flexibility to do that at their own pace. So that's the other thing I've really seen help enterprises where they have got that legacy infrastructure, and say IT managers, directors, CTOs are kind of pulling their hair out, going, "Well, how are we going to solve this? Like, we're coming up to renewing this equipment. They're looking at 600, 700,000 pounds for like an equivalent service now if they were buying from scratch." And they're just looking at, well, we just can't, that's just not going to fit in today's budget. How are we going to solve it? And say that's one way of doing it, is picking up those things off and transitioning bits and pieces, and almost they can try like multiple different contact centers or UCaaS providers or CPaaS providers, all under the same hood, and ultimately not spend the earth doing it.
Thank you, Tony. Let's just focus in on how organizations can get in touch with Voxbone for more information on your services.
Yeah, so Voxbone.com is the website address. We've got some good contact forms, so it helps us make sure we're pointing you to the right people. There's a hello@voxbone.com email address, so if you want to contact us on email. And then if anybody's listening from like the wider ecosystem that wants to talk to me about BYOC and connecting us with Voxbone at a product level, feel free to message me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to reach out to the kind of BYOC community from a vendor perspective.
Great. It's been good having you on the show today, Tony. Thanks very much, and I wish you all the best.
A pleasure, Rob. Thanks a lot.